She's got 45 seconds before she walks back on stage. Her hair is coming loose, she can feel it, and the 2 bobby pins she just pushed in aren't holding. She grabs 2 more from her kit, slides them in fast, and walks out. By the second song, they've fallen onto the stage floor. She's not using bad pins, she's using them wrong. And so, almost certainly, are you. But here's the surprising truth. The pin she's holding is a precision mechanical instrument. The wavy side is not a decoration. The flat side is not the bottom. And there are actually 2 things almost everyone does wrong. The second one, stranger than the first. Today, we're uncovering the hidden geometry of the bobby pin, how a single bent wire grips hair at a mechanical level, and why a century-old design decision has been misread by nearly every person who has ever used one. To understand the bobby pin, we first have to look at what happened before it. It's the 1890s. The Gibson girl look is everywhere. That swept-up, architecturally ambitious hairstyle that piled enormous amounts of hair on top of a woman's head and held it there through sheer structural will. The tool doing that work was the hairpin, a simple U-shaped wire that you wove through a bun in a figure-8 pattern to anchor it in place. It worked after a fashion, but it required real skill, a lot of pins working in concert, and a favorable relationship with gravity. Lose the technique, and the whole structure could slide loose by noon. The hairpin also had a maddening tendency to snag, pull, and leave visible gaps. For 2 decades, nobody found anything meaningfully better. The problem wasn't the hair, it was the grip. When the bobby pin appeared in the early 20th century, the exact origin is disputed, though a patent connecting the design to Louis Marcus is often cited around 1925. It looked almost absurdly simple. 2 thin wires, one straight, one with a small, tight wave along its length. Crimped together at one end, pinched slightly closed so they'd spring apart and snap shut against whatever you slid them over. Most people's understanding of how it works goes something like this. The flat wire sits on top of the hair, the wavy one sits underneath, and the tension between them clamps everything in place. The wave, in this reading, is texture, like the tread on a shoe sole, just giving the pin a little something to bite with. That's not entirely wrong. But if it's right, why don't we just use 2 flat wires and get even more surface contact? More surface, more grip. That's how friction works, isn't it? Actually, no. And this is where the design gets genuinely clever. Think about what happens when you drag a rope over a single nail. There's some resistance, some friction, but you can still pull the rope through with moderate effort. Now imagine that same rope draped over 5 nails in a row. Each nail bends the rope slightly, up, then back down, and at each bend, friction multiplies. By the time you've got 5 contact points, the rope is effectively locked in place under a load that would have slid freely over one nail. This is called the capstan principle, and it's why ships can hold enormous tension on a rope wrapped just a few times around a bollard. The wavy side of a bobby pin works on exactly this principle. When you insert the pin with the wavy side against your scalp, the correct orientation, and the one almost nobody uses, the small ridges catch hair at multiple points along the pin's length. Each ridge bends a small cluster of hair slightly upward and then back down, creating its own little zone of friction. In other words, instead of one long sliding surface pressing against hair, you get 5 or 6 independent grip points working simultaneously. The flat wire on top doesn't need to contribute much at all. The wave is doing the real work from below. Slide it in the wrong way, wavy side up, flat side against the scalp, and those ridges point away from the hairs. Entirely. They grip air. You're left with one smooth wire pressed against hair, one zone of weak friction, and a pin that will be on the floor inside an hour. But there's a second thing almost everyone gets wrong, and this one is stranger. Most people push a bobby pin straight in, parallel to the scalp, like sliding a letter under a door. But the pin is designed to be inserted at a slight downward angle, almost scooping under the hair, so the wave actually catches a fold of hair rather than gliding over the top of it. Do both things correctly, wavy side down, angled entry, and the pin essentially wedges itself shut. The hair has nowhere to go. It's the difference between leaning a ladder against a wall and bolting it there. For 100 years, we've been using a precision tool as though it were decorative. So why is the pin designed this way in the first place? Why not make both sides wavy, or add teeth, or simply make the whole thing thicker so it grips by force? The answer is manufacturing economics, and it's less innocent than it sounds. The bobby pin emerged during a period of rapid industrialization in the accessories industry. Simple wire-bending machinery was cheap and widely available. A pin with one straight wire and one crimped wire could be produced at an enormous scale for fractions of a cent per unit. That mattered because bobby pins were designed from the start to be a disposable product. You bought them by the box, lost half immediately, and bought more. Any more complex design, 2 wavy wires, a locking mechanism, or any kind of clasp would have required different tooling, more material, or additional assembly steps. The genius of the wavy side is that it adds real mechanical function with essentially zero added manufacturing cost. One extra pass through a crimping die. That's all. The design was never optimized for the person using it. It was optimized for the factory floor. And this is where it gets interesting. Throughout the entire 20th century, not a single major bobby pin manufacturer included usage instructions in their packaging. Not one. There was no diagram showing which side faces the scalp. No note about the insertion angle. Nothing. The box told you the quantity. That was it. Now, maybe that was just the convention of the era. Plenty of products shipped without instructions. But think about the economics for a moment. A bobby pin used correctly stays in better, falls out less, and gets lost less often. A bobby pin used incorrectly slides loose, ends up on the floor, and needs replacing sooner. Whether the silence was a deliberate strategy or simply a happy accident for the industry is something nobody is on record as saying. But the math has always pointed in one direction. Here's where it gets complicated though, because the same geometry that makes the wavy wire grip hair turns out to be useful in a completely different context. The lock sport community. People who pick locks as a hobby in sport has known for decades that a single bobby pin is one of the most effective improvised picks for a simple pin tumbler lock. The flat end becomes a tension wrench. The wavy end, straightened just slightly, becomes a rake. As you move it through the lock cylinder, the ridges bounce off the internal locking pins and push them to the shear line one by one. Exactly the same capstan principle in reversed. Instead of creating friction to hold something in place, the wave is using friction to nudge small things past each other. The bobby pin has no idea it's a hair accessory. It's a piece of bent wire doing what bent wire does. The geometry doesn't care about the application. Next time you reach for a bobby pin, don't see a lost item rattling around the bottom of a bag. See 5 or 6 grip points working in concert, a capstan wrapped in miniature, a tool that has been quietly doing more than anyone realized for over 100 years, while almost everyone held it upside down. There's something worth sitting with in them. The instructions were never written. The correct way was always there in the shape of the thing itself, waiting for someone to flip it over and feel the difference. The next question worth asking is what other tools we handle every day have a right way that nobody ever told us, and whether that silence was ever entirely accidental. If this made you rethink something you pick up without thinking, hit like and subscribe.